Remember the name Armando Abrego Garcia. He will go down in history as the one that led the charge on how to prove vindictive prosecution against the Trump administration, because it's happening. Donald Trump doesn't want it to happen, but it's happening in Tennessee. Abrego Garcia is on the 1 yard line. He's going to get that indictment against him dismissed, and it's going to be the roadmap that people like former FBI Director James Comey can use. I cover it all with my podcast partner, Ben Meiselas, on the Legal AF YouTube channel. Legal AF podcast. Forgot where I was. Here's a clip. Now we have what everybody's sitting in the front row ringside seats for, which is one of the first vindictive prosecution motions being brought by a target of the Trump administration. We effectively have two out there right now. One that was filed by Representative MacIver of New Jersey that has not yet been fully litigated, but the one that is not only moving very quickly, but to my interpretation of the order by Judge Crenshaw that just got issued last night, I think the Trump administration is going to have this indictment against Abrego Garcia for human smuggling. It's not trafficking, it's smuggling, be dismissed for vindictive prosecution, which is another version of prosecutorial misconduct and abuse. Why do I say that? Because I know the headline on a lot of mainstream media was like, discovery ordered in Abrego Garcia. Not quite. There's already been a finding by the judge that Abrego Garcia has carried his burden to show that there's at least a reasonable argument that he has been the subject of vindictive prosecution. And to win on that at a hearing, which will be coming in the future, that has now been ordered because the appellate courts of the district in which this judge operates have said, you've got to do an evidentiary hearing and you've got to allow discovery, meaning sworn statements under oath, meaning depositions. Get ready, Department of Justice. Get ready, Todd Blanche. Because the number one piece of evidence that Judge Crenshaw said supports both actual vindictive prosecution, which is usually so difficult to prove. You got to have like an email or a confession and a video on Fox in which the link between the prosecution being started in retaliation for somebody asserting their rights. And the linkage is so clear from Todd Blanche that the judge says in his order, which we posted up on Legal AF Substack, that this video clip not only supports actual vindictive prosecution, but at least it does what's called, I just blew out of my head. Give me a second. Presumptive vindictive prosecution, which is a lower standard, but gets the dismissal of the indictment none the same. And when you're doing presumptive, you look at what a reasonable person looking at all the facts would conclude about whether this was retaliation for the exercise of some right, the due process constitutional right of Abrego Garcia in Maryland after he got sent to the torture prison of El Salvador in front of Judge Zinnes and won twice at the Fourth Circuit, multiple times with Judge Zinnes, and 9-0 at the Supreme Court. Then the indictment comes out from a traffic stop during the Biden era that, as you said, didn't even result in a ticket for not driving without a license. Let's play the clip. So we always bring the receipts on Legal AF and MeidasTouch. We have the actual clip that the judge was referring to that he says shifts the burden to the government now to prove that it's not vindictive prosecution. Let's roll the clip.
So this had nothing to do with Judge Boasberg's decision, which I thought was, over the top. Supreme Court saying, you got to try to facilitate the return. So you're saying tonight that the warning of possible contempt charges against administration officials, none of that had anything to do with the investigation?
No, I mean, first of all, the Supreme Court stayed any contempt proceedings by Judge Boasberg. That case has been stayed. In this case, we had a judge in Maryland tell us that, oh no, there's not any evidence that he's a member of MS-13. You had no right to deport him. And so what should we do as a Department of Justice when a judge is accusing us of doing something wrong? We have an obligation to everybody, including you, to investigate it. And that's exactly what we did. And so the reason why he was returned and the facilitation that brought him back here is not a judge. It's an arrest warrant issued by a grand jury from the Middle District of Tennessee, charging him with 2 counts of very serious charges involving 9 years of smuggling aliens all over this country, from Texas to Maryland and other states. That's why he's back. And that's why the government of El Salvador agreed to bring him back, because of a federal arrest warrant.
Okay. So that's the clip. And the judge says, and I've read cover to cover, of course, the 16 pages or so, that, and this is something that sort of got missed by the non-legal commentators. Burden shifting is a big deal. Let's do a little teachable legal AF law school moment here. Originally, when you file the motion, the burden is on you, on your defense, to prove that it's more likely than not in this sort of circumstance that your motion should be successful, that bad thing happened to you. The burden's on you. However, here, once the move-in, in this case Abrego Garcia and his lawyers, came forward with all of the attacks on Abrego Garcia by Kristi Noem, by Pam Bondi, by Tom Homan, the bribery accepting head of the border czar, by Donald Trump, as you alluded to earlier in the segment, and Todd Blanche, particularly. Once that came in, the judge says, all right, burden's on you now. You, Department of Justice, you now have to prove to me on a more likely than not standard that you didn't vindictively prosecute. And he gave them two examples, which they'll never be able to come over that hurdle. One is, like, if you came up with new evidence since the traffic stop about that matter, or it was impossible to prosecute for some reason at that time. If those are the examples, this is not the reason that they manufactured a indictment against Abrego Garcia. It was to retaliate against him being on a winning streak in front of Judge Zinnes, the Fourth Circuit, and the U.S. Supreme Court 9-0 for his defending his due process rights, not to be sent illegally to El Salvador over his multiple orders to stay in this country and work here legally. So I see this as a winner. Here's what's going to happen. There's going to be a hearing next week. Judge Crenshaw is going to set the parameters for the discovery and the depositions, because he says it has to be sworn testimony. Then he's going to set a hearing, maybe October, November. And I think that indictment gets kicked. And that's great news to LaMonica MacGyver, representative from New Jersey, Letitia James, New York Attorney General, Senator Adam Schiff, could be Lisa Cook, certainly to James Comey, about how you effectively use vindictive prosecution as a way to defeat the Trump administration.
I just am looking forward to what this discovery is going to look like. That federal judge out of the Middle District of Tennessee was really smart, I think, in the way the order did not really divest the discretion that the judge has. If you dismissed it right away for vindictive prosecution, what would happen? Trump regime would immediately try to appeal it, and they would, try to rush to the Supreme Court. By making this factual finding in a very detailed way, and then ordering discovery, the judge is well within their discretion to do that. And what I think will probably happen is you're going to see all these people like Attorney General Blanche, who's made public statements. I mean, Donald Trump's made public statements. Pam Bondi has made public statements. In what world do they think that they are not susceptible to depositions and discovery here when they're out there saying all of these things about Abrego Garcia? Now, you may say, but I've never heard other attorney generals or heads of FBI or deputy attorney generals getting deposed in vindictive prosecution cases. What are these just leftist judges who are doing that? No, it's criminal actors in the executive office behaving in ways that the FBI, the DOJ, a president has never behaved before. Attorney General Merrick Garland would not be out there making statements about, and set aside Merrick Garland, go back. Gonzalez, the George W. Bush, attorney, go back to any attorney general. They don't make public statements about specific cases or even general cases. They're very circumspect in their interviews. They're not out there tweeting and posting, because you make yourself susceptible to discovery in situations like this. And it's supposed to be independent. And then within the independence of the DOJ, the various districts are supposed to, they all report to Main Justice, but they're also supposed to act locally and in the interest and semi-autonomously, although obviously linked to the Department of Justice. I want to point this out as well, which is what Stephen Miller posted earlier. And this is what Miller is saying about judges. He goes, the Democrat Party has filled our legal and judicial system with radicals who protect left-wing terrorists. This is a very real and dire crisis for our Republican form of government. As our editor-in-chief, Ron Filipkowski, says, this seems like incitement of violence against judges. It doesn't seem like it. It is incitement of violence against judges. And this is Trump's main guy, Stephen Miller, a weirdo, as California Governor Gavin Newsom says, the guy, the guy in the armchair watching in the hotel room is what Governor Newsom. Governor Newsom actually wrote that and posted that. So I'm just quoting. So this stuff is weird. It's deranged. It's weak. It's not the United States of America. There are George W. Bush judges, George H.W. Bush judges, Ronald Reagan judges, Trump judges, Obama judges, Biden judges. At the district court level, I would say overwhelmingly, regardless of who's appointed you, they're ruling against Donald Trump at a very high rate.
93%.
At the circuit court level, pretty much also affirming what the district court judges are doing. Certainly a less percentage, but still at a pretty high percent.
Slightly, maybe high 80s.
In the Supreme Court, different story. And this is why you've done multiple hot takes on what's happening there, where on a procedural basis, not even on substantive and merits, on a procedural basis, the Supreme Court right-wing justices have been stepping in and they've been saying, we're going to stay or pause the lower court's ruling because we think that there will be irreparable harm to the United States presidency if the district courts, whatever the order was, stays in place.
Welcome back. It was the podcast. We sit at the intersection of law and politics twice a week, Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern time on the MeidasTouch network, so you don't have to. And then come over and you can subscribe. Pick us up on audio podcast platforms like Apple and Spotify. Leave a 5-star review. That helps. Watch us on the YouTube version. Come over to Legal AF YouTube channel and subscribe there. And of course, finally, cherry on top, we've got Legal AF, the Substack, where I do live reporting twice a day. So do all of that. Now you're a full card-carrying member of Legal AF. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.